everybody. Welcome to our next unit, and our next unit is going to be analyzing text structure. So we're going to be focusing on what is in the author's head, and we're going to try and get into the author's head a little bit more even than our last unit, which was articulating the main idea. When we started talking about main idea and composing thesis statements for author's work, we talked about trying to get into the author's head to see what the point is. What were they trying to tell us? What was the communication that they wanted to tell the reader? And now we're going to go one step further, and we're going to figure out how the author organized their text so we can understand it better. We're going to try and think like the author, because that's how we can make more meaning with the text. So down here on the right hand side on the bottom, this is the reason we are going to be focusing on text structure this unit. It's because it will help you understand the text better, which is really the point of the class, right? Is to understand texts deeply and read closely, but it also helps you make more accurate predictions and inferences, so you're engaging with the text on a deeper level. It helps you learn things at an easier rate, and it helps you improve your own writing. So a lot of you are already taking a writing class, probably English 800, and what they're going to be talking to you about are some of the same things that you're going to see in this class. So we're going to be looking at, in this presentation, we're going to be looking at modes of discourse and author's purpose. And those modes of discourse have different synonyms, just like main idea has synonyms like thesis and gist. Modes of discourse has different synonyms too. And so your English teacher might be calling them rhetorical modes, and that's kind of the one that I have heard in the English department the most. So they mean the same thing. And if you know how other authors are using the rhetorical modes or the modes of discourse in their writing, then it will be easier for you to use those same modes in your writing, so you can have really clear writing for the people that read your writing as well. So, how do authors organize their work? Well, there are three components that make up text organization, and one is author's purpose, the other is modes of discourse, and the third one is patterns of organization. And for this presentation, we're not going to focus on patterns of organization yet. We're going to save that for later, and we are really going to focus on author's purpose and modes of discourse in this presentation and in the practice materials for this week. Okay, so what is author's purpose? Well, it's as easy as pie. Here's the definition of author's purpose. Author's purpose explains why the author is writing the text. What did the author want to accomplish? Why did they sit down at their keyboard and start writing? Why did they find a piece of paper and a pencil, right? And so there are three major purposes for writing. You can name a lot of little tiny ones, but they all fill into these three categories. And those categories are to persuade, to inform, and to entertain. So when an author decides that they want to persuade a reader, they're going to write in a certain way in order to convince them to either do something or to believe something that they want them to believe. So a really great example of that is the presidential election that's going to happen next November. We have seen lots and lots of debates for the Democratic nominee. We don't have a Democratic nominee yet, but there's a whole bunch of people who want to be the Democratic nominee. So there was lots of debates. Bloomberg bought up all of the TV commercials, I swear, when he was in the race to try and convince people that he was the best candidate to be the nominee for Democrat. So they're trying to persuade us to like them the most, to believe that they will do the best job. the other people that try and persuade us all the time are commercials, right? Ads. All kinds of advertising is trying to persuade you that their product is the best and to buy their product, right? So that's the first one, is persuade. The next one is inform. So an author might need to inform either themselves or others of things that they want them to remember. So this is just basically to tell you what's going on. Someone's gonna tell you that it's sunny outside, or tell you that there's a virus going around, or explain how the rules of the game work. They're just going to tell you something. So if I was going to make a list, because I was going to go to Target and I needed a list of what I needed at Target, it would fall into the inform category, because I'm trying to inform myself of what I need, so I buy it, right? I'm not trying to convince myself to buy it. I'm just trying to write it down so I don't forget. I'm informing myself. The last one, of course, is entertain, and this is to amuse the reader. So I want you to think of this in terms of movies or sitcoms right now. The reason you go to a movie usually is to be entertained, even though you might go to horror movies and you really want to be scared. Well, that frightening part of the horror movie is entertaining to you, and that's why you go, right? So you have to think a little bit broadly about this, because I am sure that you've all been to a movie or seen a show that has made you feel sad or cry. And then you think, oh, that's not very entertaining. But the purpose of what the author wanted to do might be to entertain you anyway. And if you can see this bullet point down here, they can use these three purposes can be used individually or in combination. So maybe an author who writes a screenplay for a movie wants to inform you about a piece of history, but they do it in a way that you're going to be entertained so that you will go and watch it. So they're trying to make it entertaining, but the major purpose would be to inform. Does that make sense? And I have an example down there is for commercials. If you've ever watched the Super Bowl, I know that I watch the Super Bowl to watch the commercials because they're entertaining, they're funny. But the purpose for the commercials are still to have you buy their products. So sometimes there are secondary purposes and primary purposes. So you have to be thinking a little bit deeper about author's purpose than you think. All right, the other thing that I want to talk to you about, oh, I forgot. We're going to do a little bit of practicing right now. So on a piece of paper, stop the video right now, and I have some texts written right here. The wrong choice, how children succeed pieces, and then those 4 metacognitive texts, frogs, outsiders, how to hatch a dinosaur, and the wall of the heart. Try and figure out what the author's purpose was for all of those texts and just jot it down. You're going to need it for the practice part, so make sure you jot them down, okay? So just stop the video and do that now. Okay, we're going to move on now that you've done that, and I'm going to talk to you about what modes of discourse are. The modes of discourse is a little bit deeper of a look into author's purpose. This explains what way the author is going to write the text. So it's sort of a genre. So there are 4 major modes of discourse. We have a narrative, and that tells a story. It can be a true story or a made-up story, and it's usually ordered by time. Once upon a time, blah, 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 right? So that's a narrative. That's a type, that's a way that authors can write. Another way that authors can write is description. So this is all about the 5 senses. It's about what the author wants you to picture in your head, right? So what do you see? What do you smell? How does it feel? What does it taste like? The focus is usually on visual perception, so what it looks like, but all 5 senses can be included, right? So it's going to describe a person or a place or an object. So when you're reading a story, like if you're reading your book club books and you're reading and all of a sudden the author decides to explain what the room looks like, then that is a description. So it takes a little break from the narrative, and the description is embedded into the narrative. So that's a little bit tricky, but description is definitely there. Another one is expository. So the expository texts, they explain ideas and how things work. Again, this is the telling part. It's very objective, which means it doesn't have a lot of opinion. It's mostly facts. It's logical and factual, and it just tells the facts, ma'am. It doesn't have any kind of, it has very little bias. And that's different than persuasion, because persuasion is meant to convince the reader, right? We talked about that on the last slide. And there is a genre called persuasion, and that's the way you're writing. So it presents an argument, and that argument is an opinion usually, and it offers support for that opinion. You should vote for me because, right? And that argument has two sides usually, and usually it's biased toward one side. So another persuasion text might be a text about abortion, right? It might be a text saying that you shouldn't ever get an abortion no matter what. Or it could be a text that says you should be able to get an abortion. And so that word should really does help us see what side we're on, and that is a persuasive text. So those are the four main modes of discourse. Okay? And again, I'm going to have you stop the video now, and with those same texts, try and figure out what mode of discourse did each of those texts have. Okay, so now that we're back, your next steps are practicing the author's purpose and modes of discourse. So you're going to be ready to share your ideas of the author's purpose and the modes of discourse for all of those texts that I had you stop the video for. And you're going to be able to share that on my presentation on VoiceThread. All right? I'm going to go over the purpose discourse worksheet in that presentation, and I'm also going to go over the poverty packet. So if you have a printer, you may want to print those things out. I would please ask you, if you print the poverty packet, just don't read it, because we're going to go over it together during the VoiceThread. So you don't need to read that on your own. If you want to read over the worksheet of the purpose and discourse worksheet, you can, but we're going to go over each of those paragraphs in the VoiceThread as well. So that's going to be our kind of classwork thing, is the VoiceThread. So now that you're done with this introduction, we're going to go over to VoiceThread, and I'm going to practice with you on how to understand how author's purpose and modes of discourse works within a text. I will see you there.